Hello, welcome everyone to the Beacon of Light podcast. And we are thrilled to have with us tonight a wonderful author who's in my home city, or at least at one point she was. I'm really excited to have Kimberly Allen join us tonight. And before I start talking to her, I'm going to jump into this. I'm April Tribe Juke. Welcome to the Beacon of Light podcast. I believe we are all made with light, and light is hope. This podcast brings authors who write stories of hope to all of you. Your journey to be inspired and amplified by these stories starts now. And we are back. Welcome, Kim. This is thrilling and exciting because I didn't know that you had written a book, and that is just really cool. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay, so my name's Kimberly Allen, and I live here in Twin Falls, where April lives. And I was an instructional coach most recently with the Twin Falls School District for the last 12 years of my career as an educator. Prior to that, I taught English and actually a year of Spanish, and I taught English as a second language, which was a real joy to me. So I taught for over 20 years and retired 2 years ago. And I'm also
great.
I'm a mom of 8 in a blended family. So a lot going on in our lives. And now we're spending our retirement traveling from Maui to Connecticut, where our kids are spread, seeing kids and grandkids.
Well, a lot to sign in there. I got it, though. Fantastic. I mean, poor you having to go to Maui to see your grandkids.
Right.
I hope I suffer that pain, too. Fantastic. That is great. So let's pop the book up here. It's called Pearls. Let me try that again. Pearls of Sand. So where did this come from? Is this an instructional coaching book? Is this a memoir? Share a little bit about this book.
Okay, so I am one of 5 million adoptees in the United States. I was adopted at birth, and I'll show you a little. Here's the cover. This is Pearls from Sand, a story of adoption, identity, and DNA discovery. So DNA discovery is also becoming many people's story these days with technology. So my why was about 4 years ago, I just felt this relentless energy pushing me to write. And I wasn't sure what I was supposed to write, but I just felt a spirit really telling me, you've got to write, you've got to write. So I enrolled in a few writing courses at our local college for maybe 4 different semesters. I published an article in an online parenting magazine. And one night, it was in December of 2020, it just lit on me. It's your adoption story. It's kind of compelling and interesting for people. It's the story of many people, the story of infertility and accidental pregnancies and the blessing adoption can be. There weren't any celebratory adoption stories that I ever found out there. And they say, write what you would want to read. And I love sharing light. I love your podium of sharing light. And I felt the same. I need to share the joy and seeing God's hand in my story. So that's how it came about and how I got started.
So you're kind of alluding to that your story of adoption is one of happiness and one of something that, you really want to share this because you had mentioned that there are other books out there, maybe talking about the challenges or the hard times or the awful things that have happened. And life can happen to anyone. But for yourself, this is a story of light. So please share without giving us the whole book. So we want to go out there and still get it.
Okay. So my parents had always told me I was adopted. They told me I was like Moses. I was placed by a loving birth mother who sent me upstream to more empowered, yearning arms, to a more privileged life. And that was my bedtime story for life, really, my adoption. And when my parents drove to St. George, Utah to pick me up from a one-room birthing center, and how thrilled they were driving home after years of infertility. So when I was about 12, though, I started to have curiosities as I developed, like, who is this woman who made this grand sacrifice for my life? I had so much gratitude for her, and I wanted to thank her someday. So I went to my parents at the age of 12 and said, we need to find her and thank her. And my parents are so open-minded, open-hearted. They absolutely agreed. And they told me later, they said they felt that the Spirit had been communicating to them that they needed to find her, to put her mind at ease, let her know I was well, in the same few months preceding when I went to speak to them. So the Spirit was speaking to all of us. You need to find her and let her know you're well. So when I had that conversation with them, they said, yes, we can do that.
That is amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, they're really outstanding. I absolutely won the mom and dad lottery. So when I was 12, my mom found her in one day before the internet existed, which is quite amazing.
That is amazing. In one day, was she in the same kind of area, somewhere far across the country, in a different country? I mean, that is amazing.
Yeah. So the Salt Lake Valley is set up like Israel, really. So there's the Dead Sea, what is like the Great Salt Lake. Utah Lake is like the freshwater lake there, and the Jordan River that flows from one to the other. And I was raised just across the Salt Lake Valley on the other side of the Jordan River from 9 half birth siblings who I later was able to find through my birth mother, her 3 daughters, and then an additional 6 after a DNA discovery many years later. I held on to my birth father's name for 35 years after my birth mother shared it with me when I was 18. And DNA confirmed his name and the relatives, that I was related to on that side. So I have now met 9 half birth siblings.
Wow. How were some of those meetings? How did it go?
Yeah, so it is not an Oprah Winfrey show or a Phil Donahue moment. It's not like sensationalist television. It's very real, very low key. It is nervousness, but it's meeting strangers. And so a big part of my book is the fact that blood is not love, but family is love. And you grow to love people by becoming more familiar with them. And I've grown to love all of my birth family. But in the beginning, you're meeting strangers.
It is. It's like anything. Whether you were related through blood or not, when you first time meet people, you're like, okay, I guess I got to build a relationship, get to know who they are. And with that added connection of blood, it still procedurally feels maybe a little similar, but I'm really, I think it's thrilling to know that they, as well as you, wanted a connection and were able to develop relationships. So within this, your book is called Pearls of Sand. And in those pearls of sand, tell us a little bit about why you chose that metaphor for your life.
Sure. Yeah, it's actually pearls from sand.
Sorry, from sand. My bad. We
It's
were
okay.
things back.
So not many people know this, but not only a piece of sand will transform into a pearl, but sometimes an organism can invade an oyster and cause pain and discomfort, at which point the oyster develops this nacre, which is also called mother of pearl, to cover that organism over and over. So I think of myself a little bit like that intruder who found its way into an oyster as I was the result of an unintended pregnancy. But the love of my birth mother, she nourished me and nurtured me in the womb. And she wanted the very best for me. She treated me like a gem of great price. And then when she placed me for adoption, my parents reaffirmed my entire life, you are a gem of great price, who was nurtured in the womb. And now we have the blessing of raising you. And this was God's plan. His hand was in it all along.
And in that hand, I love the idea that the concept, if I kind of take a 30,000-foot view, it's probably higher than that since we're talking about Earth and the universe, but we'll go with what I can deal with an airplane. So we've got your Earth, right? And you've got this loving God who can oversee everything. And I love to look at it like that. It's a simple way, but I think it's really accurate because he can, within my little mind, that picture of that is he is looking at all. And he is hearing and receiving the prayers of all. And the prayers of that birth mother within her heart, placing a tender mercy there to say, I've got you, and knowing, oh, this is the family. And knowing, okay, now I'm going to send the Spirit to start those little promptings. And now, and the journey, because the decision and the freedom is, are we going to follow that prompting? Or are we going to go, we're going to brush it aside? So there is our decision, because God cannot control and say, well, this will happen, that will happen, in the sense of like all these things. But he knows us so well that he's like, she'll buy it. She's going in for it. And it's just fun to see the love like that. And in those places where you maybe you started as that little intruder, the value and the worth of a gem and the display, right? You don't hide your gems, you display them. And to know that you are part of that string of pearls that are displayed, it is such a beautiful thing to think about. So tell us how you did share a little bit about the Spirit knocking on you like, hey, you got to write this story. Tell us about that process of when you were in it. Was it just like, oh, ta-da, here's your book?
Oh, actually, that's a great story too, because there's a backstory here. So I met my birth mother when I was 18. My parents corresponded with her by mail for the 6 years from the age of 12 to 18. And then I actually found a letter from her. And that's when I discovered, oh, my parents know my birth mother. So then we had to sit down and they said, yeah, we found her. Are you ready to meet her? So, and she was very anxious once she learned that I knew, that they knew of her whereabouts. And she had a daughter leaving on a mission. And so there was some urgency there for us to meet. So we met, and then we got to know each other over a period of a few years. And we decided to write our open adoption story. This was an era of closed adoptions, and we'd opened it. And, thanks to my loving parents. So we met with Elaine Cannon, who was then quite well known in the church and an author herself and a friend of my birth mother. And we started to write. So my birth mother, Margaret, wrote a third of the book, and my mom wrote a third of the book, and I wrote a third of the book. But I lived in Charlotte, North Carolina. It was where we started our lives, and I had my first child, and communication was less abundant. There was not email. We called on Sundays because it was 10 cents a minute. It was hard to coordinate. And then we moved back to Idaho, closer to home. And one night, my dad called on a Sunday night. It was after 10:30, and I was alarmed that I was getting a call this late after 10:30 on a Sunday. And I said, hello? And he said, Kimmy. And I said, Dad, is everything okay? And he said, honey, Margaret was killed in a car accident today. So our story was shelved, and I had this manuscript printed on dot matrix paper from way back when, put it in my filing cabinet, and I didn't think about it again for 30 years until the spirit was, pushing on me to write. And so that became a great resource to me as I wrote, because I had my birth mother's story, her words, her falling in love and becoming pregnant, and then, marriage not being the answer in that case. And I had my mom's beautiful story of meeting my dad and their infertility struggle. And so it came together pretty easily because I had their stories to combine with my experience.
That, well, let's just sit with that for a hot minute, because that's just really preparatory, right, for the right timing for all these things. So meeting with someone, writing a third, having everything, knowing, again, not you knowing, the Lord knowing, my Father knowing, she's going to be called home before this can happen.
Yeah.
But it'll be there. And don't worry, I got plans. I got everyone covered. It's okay. And I think when we think outside of the moment, and it's such a struggle, right? Be in the moment. Don't be in the moment. Think of the future. Don't think of the future. Don't dwell on your past, but remember the past. What are we supposed to be doing? There's so much advice. Really, if we just keep ourselves fluid to glean what we need at the moment we need, be present when we can, and put things in the future, that allows us, with the Spirit's guidance, to know what to do when the timing is right. Because his clock is so different than ours. And he winds it. He knows it. He built it. So, just flow with it. It's going to be okay. What a beautiful thing to then have this third story, and to put this all together. I mean, what a challenge that would have been, because where do you go to research a story like that? A partial interview, it would feel like you would have a 8x11 piece of paper with the full story on it, and then just shred it to bits, and then you put it together as a puzzle, and it's only a fourth of the 8x11 page, and you're like, that's all I got. And then this is in depth. That's just such a beautiful thing to know, that when the Lord's in charge and you trust and follow it, the right timing, his timing, will happen. That is just fantastic. So you've written the book. Tell us about the concept of your audience who wants to read this book.
So when I first put it out there, I literally wrote, I do not know who this is for. I hope whoever needs it gets it, because as I said, I was absolutely compelled to write it. So I don't know if it's gotten into the hands of those who need it most yet. I don't know if it's for fellow adoptees. There were pre-Roe v. Wade, there were 2 million adoptees in the decade just before Roe v. Wade. So there are so many of us my age who are now discovering through DNA our biological connections. So maybe it's for adoptees. Maybe it's for birth mothers who have made a tremendous sacrifice, to know that it's sanctified, that what they've done is a tremendous generosity. Maybe it's for couples struggling with infertility and knowing the blessing that adoption is. And also there are themes that are wider. For example, Pearls from Sand is also about the concept of there must needs be opposition in all things, that beauty comes from pain. And that sometimes hitting rock bottom is a boon, because you bounce. You push yourself up from the bottom of the pool. and make something beautiful of what you've experienced. And so this was, at one point, my story was a very painful circumstance for my birth mother, unbelievably painful. She'd already been divorced and she had 2 daughters. She was a single mom. And so she was looking at being a single mom of a 3rd child. And the first 2 daughters, their dad had left, and she had heartache at having them not have a dad as a presence in their lives, and wanted that for me. So she was going through quite a bit of pain. My birth father, even though, he decided that marrying was not what was best for them, and that caused him considerable angst and pain. My parents going through their pain of infertility. But all these years later, as you were saying, April, the benefit of the rearview mirror in life and being able to see God's hand and how he is ever present and making connections, making beauty come from pain. That's what Pearls from Sand means to me.
Well, that is a beautiful way to share this information with everyone. So, Kim, where can we grab this book?
Okay, so it's available on Amazon, so both paperback and Amazon Kindle. And it's also, I'm just thrilled about this. This is one of the most precious experiences of my life, to have my daughter record it for Audible. So it's now on Audible. My daughter is an actress. She's a voice actress, a stage actress, and she's actually been in a film on Amazon Prime. So she is right now, she's earning her MFA, her Master's in Fine Arts, in screenwriting. And I was able to work with her on recording the Audible version.
That is fantastic. Because I know in my life, my readability with time, I enjoy books, and within my mundane of life happening, plugging into a book, it's really fun. So this will be a great way for myself to be able to go through it and to read it. So I'm thrilled to hear about that. Wonderful. Is that also out currently, or is it still being produced?
Yeah, it was released about 6 or 8 weeks ago on Audible.
Awesome. Okay, so now you guys have all the options. No excuses. Finish. As my daughter says, no excuses, finish. Okay. And that's just blunt to the point. Yes. And so go out and grab this book on Amazon. Again, Pearls from Sand, not of, but from. I apologize for that. And so thank you so much for all of the things that you have brought to us today, Kim. And you can see running on the ticker underneath, if you would like to contact her and reach out, she has generously offered her Gmail. So Kimberly Patton Allen at gmail.com. So reach to her, and you probably have known someone or met someone, or you might be yourself one of those adoptees. And if you want to have a positive and upfilled light of hope for a book like this, go out and grab that. So Kim, with just a few minutes left, is there anything you would like to close us out with tonight?
I would just say it's also a story of deliverance. It was a literal delivery that took place in 1967. And I felt delivered, but by my parents reaching out, my birth mother was delivered. And by meeting all of my siblings, it just feels like a beautiful restoration and deliverance for everyone involved. And that I have faith that we have a great deliverer who delivers us all and makes all things well in time.
Beautiful way to say it. Thank you so much, Kim. Go out and grab this book, Pearls from Sand, and we will see you guys next week. Thanks, everybody.